Hey, Collin and Jen, thanks for hanging out with me today. How are you both doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks.
It's a gloomy day here in Virginia, but it's a good day to spend tons of time on the internet. So that's why we're here. But it's funny because the three of us, we've emailed so many times over the past 3.5 years or so, but we've never actually spoken on the phone and we've never actually seen each other face to face. And Collin, I'm not going to lie, I was looking you up today on Google as I do when I talk to most people on here. And I watched some of your Senate hearing that you were part of, which was absolutely amazing. And it's weird to see someone in the brewing industry wear a suit. That's something that I had to do like a double take on because jeans and a t-shirt, you got that fun pattern going right now. But you don't ever see someone in craft beer in a fancy suit.
It's like my wedding suit. Like I literally have like one suit that's for like weddings, funerals. It worked out for the testimony thing, which the Brewers Association helped set that up. But that was a really cool. It was a cool opportunity. Like one of those things, like once in a lifetime, get to go do it. It was neat.
It was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I'm sure a lot of people you met in Congress really don't have the opportunity to speak regularly, at least as not as much as we hope, with people who actually own breweries. So I think it's probably great they got the opportunity to hear your voice.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been president of the Ohio Craft Brew Association for this will be my 6th and final year terming out, but it's really given me a lot of insight into how much like face-to-face appearances and kind of even those brief like visits that people can do, having a legislator come to your brewery, like those kind of things, that matters so much for public policy. And when they can like think of a person and put a face to a name, and it's not just like a faceless issue that their aide is feeding them, but they attach it to someone, it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it's not something I even planned to ask you to today, but so many times when a politician goes to a brewery, it becomes something that's political. How have you built relationships with your local politicians to keep them from, swaying towards one party or the other?
So we try and for OCBA, we've always said like there's no red or blue, there's just beer kind of thing. And whatever my personal affiliations, I definitely tend to be more liberal Democrat side. But we've been able to work like across party lines with some of our strongest supporters. And actually, Senator Portman, who's retiring this year, I do not agree with him on everything, but he has been a craft beer supporter since before craft beer was cool. And he's done like amazing things for the industry. He's one of the people who's probably done the most out of any of the sitting senators, and there's a lot of people like that. I mean, it's given me a really good perspective on you genuinely don't have to agree with everybody about everything, but you can find things that you do agree with them on. And most people, I won't say this for all politicians I've met, but most people, they're coming at it from a place where they genuinely want to help at the end of the day. So it's kind of getting that basic humanity out of people, and getting people to want to help you and understand where you're going with things. It helps out a lot.
Absolutely, that's great.
A lot of our local politicians, we are their favorite watering hole as well. Columbus has a pretty forward-thinking local government. So.
And Jen, that definitely doesn't hurt when you enjoy your beer for sure.
Yeah.
So you own 3 businesses in the Columbus, Ohio area. You started with Seventh Son Brewing Company. You launched Antiques on High, which I know the focus there is more so on the sour beer side. And then you are planning to open the Getaway Brewing Companies shortly. I mean, that's a lot of businesses you both have launched over the course of, about 8 years now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Seventh Son is we're coming up on we're calling it our second 7th anniversary because we were cheated out of our first 7th anniversary.
I like it.
So we're coming up on that on 420 here coming up, and then Antiques is about 2 years old now, and Getaway, it's looking like that is going to open. It might actually be 420 or very close to it. So.
That's exciting. And on 420, we're actually hosting a conference here in Craft Beer Professionals. And at 420, we're going to do a conversation on adding cannabis and CBD to, beverages. So trying to tie everything in together.
Yeah.
What's 420? What does that mean?
April 20th, I don't know. But you guys' relationship and friendship, it goes back way before you first launched Seventh Son. You two met in 8th grade. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so Jen, I have to ask you, what was Collin like in 8th grade?
We were both really similar to what we are now. He was always doing something different, or like he was always doing a lot of things. I think when I met him, he was playing Robin Hood in the school play, and I was really into theater. Not that he was like a theater kid at all, but he would like down.
I ever ended up doing that. That's weird.
He played tennis. He like did whatever. He felt like, and I think that I was very similar to that, kind of a like not a jock, not an art kid, but like friends with everybody kind of person. But yeah, he was just, I don't know, always ambitious for sure.
And Collin, to turn the tables, what was Jen like when you first met her back then in middle school?
I think she kind of nailed it. Like we were both in groups of friends that were kind of friends with everybody and had a bunch of different interests. What else do I remember about them? I don't think you weren't doing any sports then.
No,
none of us really stuck. I think the smoking and drinking kind of shortly after 8th grade. We met in 8th grade, and shortly after that, the smoking and drinking got the best of any sports dreams or anything for the rest of high school. Unfortunately, yeah, it was much more like where can we drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and try and be cool somewhere.
So you kind of lost your dreams of being a big tennis star?
Yeah, I came back to it about 10 years ago, and someday I'm going to get on the senior circuit and just wow the world. I think we got the older we get, the healthier we get, and the more now I run all the time and like to play tennis and stuff like that. And it's funny, it comes full circle.
That is funny. So back then, like looking into the crystal ball of the future, what did you think you'd be doing at this point in your lives? I mean, were you just going to be Peter Pan on Broadway?
Yeah.
What, Jen?
I definitely wanted to work for myself. I don't really know when I thought about doing that as a thing. Like Collin was 18 when he first opened, or 16 when he first started working for himself, really. But I remember, no, I didn't think I'd own a brewery, but I was interested in owning something like a nonprofit or doing something in social service. But I've always wanted to like work with people, like a lot of people, be around a lot of people. So that I'm doing, I suppose.
And I take it you weren't a craft beer fan, at the age of 12, just yet.
No, I
can make my own money, or I can mow people's lawns and I can make my own money, like whatever it was, and like kind of make my own money and be more in charge of my own thing. And then that just kind of spiraled into a couple different businesses, and then the restaurant that eventually led into owning the brewery, because I had decided that I just liked the brewery community a lot more than the restaurant community overall, and was kind of more fascinated by the drink side of it than the food side. Although I love the food, it's just not, beer has always been the thing that got me interested in things.
Now, Jen had mentioned when you were 16, you kind of started working for yourself. Was it selling those grilled cheese sandwiches in parking lots or cutting grass? Which one of those came first?
In high school, I used to order, it was like 92, 93, 94, and 95. I mail ordered Grateful Dead tickets for the summer tours for like the East Coast tour, and it was mostly the East Coast tours. And I would sell grilled cheese sandwiches, dollar grilled cheese, in parking lots at Dead shows. And then I had my brother's fake ID. He was 5 years older. So I eventually graduated to selling beer in parking lots at Dead shows. And Deadheads were always way ahead of like everyone else in beer taste. So that's actually what got me into selling or being excited about craft beer, was selling beers in parking lots.
That's amazing. So my background, I don't know if you know, I ran a food service for a really long time, and I would work at a lot of special events over the years. And I've worked a couple of Dead shows, the new revivals of the Dead versus, the lineups you were seeing in the 90s. But I've worked a lot of Fish shows. Have you ever been to the Hampton Coliseum?
Oh yeah. We did after Dead. I spent a little bit of time blowing glass, and then going around to Fish shows and selling hand-blown glass stuff. And definitely saw some Fish shows too.
Summer. We did that for
actually,
our business partner, which was our trial run for the brewery.
Yeah, it was me and Jen and Travis.
Yeah.
Honda.
We were probably at some of the same shows at the same time at the Coliseum if you guys were there. So that's a small world. Probably. It was so funny because I was working with like the food services inside the venues that I would work at, and we would envy everybody in the parking lot selling those $1 grilled cheeses. And one time during those runs of fish coming to town, we actually put someone in the parking lot out of their car selling grilled cheeses for like $1 as well. And I think they made more money than the people inside because you didn't have to pay all the rent, the taxes, and things like that.
Yeah, it was a very simple. It was really like a basic, like really basic, really simple. Like you'd go to a town, you'd find the Sam's Club, find the bread, find the cheese, have your little Coleman grill, set up for an hour or two, make a couple $100. Like it was great.
What's the most grilled cheeses you two sold in a parking lot?
I was not around for grilled cheese.
She wasn't around for the cheese. She was around for the pipes afterwards at the fish shows. So we used to do pretty well selling. It was when hand blown glass was getting popular, and we used to do pretty all right at some of these shows, especially the big like the year end ones that Fish used to have up in Maine. Like we actually drove like a U-Haul truck full of glass up to one of those one time, and that was something.
Probably did really well on that one. A U-Haul truck full of product. So after years and for however long you were doing like the parking lot gig, when did you decide you wanted to kind of settle down a little bit more back in Columbus? I know, Collin, you mentioned you started your beer bar. You're like in the more in the restaurant vibe. When did you launch that business?
That was in 2005, and it was after we had actually been wholesaling pipes all around the country with some other guys who live here in town who are still in the business. And we built a pretty successful wholesale business. And then the thing that got Tommy Chong, Operation Pipe Dreams, that happened. And I think we were only like 25 or 26 and just said, it's not worth going to jail for, and just shut it down and decided to do something else. So that was the craft beer bar, which was originally a little more slanted towards being like coffee shop and carry out, and then just kind of turned into more of a craft beer centric place. And became one of the first places in Columbus, I think in 2006 or 7, to have like 50 taps, and that was a big deal then. And that's kind of what introduced me to the craft beer world.
So you said, you both mentioned like it was the parking lots where you kind of got to learn a little bit more about the new trends coming in the craft beer world. When did you first start to consider yourself like a craft beer person, and it became your life to make you even want to, open a restaurant along those lines?
I worked at a really awesome bar in town when the 6% cap was lifted. It was in 2002, I think, or 1 in Columbus. And so it was really fun. It was like a wine bar that was owned by a couple of European folk who were bananas. And amazing selection, though, really amazing selection. So they had all those awesome Trappist and Abbey ales that we could not get prior to that. So I started drinking all that Belgian beer, and then that's like a whole world. And then they were definitely importing. There was like 2 distributors in town that started really getting all the craft beer. It was Premium and Cavalier, and any good beer bar would start getting all that beer in, basically from a lot of it from Colorado, California, Pennsylvania. But I think for me, it was probably when I was like 23, I started really appreciating beer, because I started with wine, but I definitely grew more into beer and then spirits.
And what had you been doing before all of this, Jen?
I had been working in restaurants and things like that. In California, when I was about 21, 22, I managed a nonprofit Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which was part of a social enterprise nonprofit 501c3 in San Francisco, and they owned 3 of the Ben & Jerry's scoop shops. Ben & Jerry's will waive a franchise fee for a nonprofit to open, and if they're doing things that Ben & Jerry's agrees with. And so basically we would train what would now be called, you wouldn't call them at-risk youth anymore, you would call them something different, and that term is escaping me. But They were so awesome. Kids from all over the city that weren't going to have the opportunity to get like hardcore job training and like kind of learn how to acclimate in like a work world, how to save their money and invest in something. And we would give them money back if they saved a certain amount. We would match that amount for them and help them buy a computer or go to school. It was really rewarding. It was awesome. And then when I moved home, I got that job at the craft beer bar and wine bar right away.
Was the Ben and Jerry's experience like a temporary, job, or you were like on for like a year type time period?
It was 2 years. It was 2 years. It was 2 years, but it definitely made me. I moved home because my sister had a baby. My grandpa was sick. It was all sorts of things, but it sort of made me. That job made me think that I wanted to open something or do something. And I originally had thought like a nonprofit, training kids to do something or how to acquire skills that they normally wouldn't be able to get.
No, that's really rewarding. Then you started working at the wine bar. And then when did you and Collin reconnect in Ohio?
Well, we were always friends. Like, I mean, I feel like when I moved home from California, he picked me up at the airport because I surprised my family. Like he and his girlfriend picked me up at the airport, So we were always like, and he came out to visit me when I lived there. A friend of ours, like we've had almost this like sibling, like even if a year goes by, like I just call him, and it was very much a relationship like that all our lives, I think, So
I think when we in 2009, 2010, our other business partner Travis really started very lightly dabbling in homebrewing a little bit, and was just
like 2008.
2008, yeah. And just kind of said like, hey, we should do this. We can open up a brewery or something. What do you think? And kind of tossed it around for a little while, and then I took a couple classes at CBP, just on how to open a brewery and basic brewing techniques and everything. And then from there, we were like, oh, we should get somebody else involved in this. And it just, both of us, because Travis has been friends with Jen since even before we were friends, I think like
fifth grade.
So
I remember coming to Bodega that night and I was like, you need me in the mix. And you were like, okay, let's talk Sunday. Like, because it was to that point. Yeah.
It just seemed like it would be really like complimentary. And I think something that we have that's worked really well for us is that all three of our personalities are really complementary, and we overall like work awesome together and can have known each other long enough to have genuine arguments, but still make up afterwards. And it's a really great partnership.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was around like 2009 then that it was like official. We said, hey, let's get Jen involved in this. And then we started to kind of look for a space, found a space like 2010, started working on it, got loans, did the whole thing, and started making our beer, produced our first beer, and served it in that April 4/2013. It's kind of the timeline.
Was there ever a fear that going in business together would ruin the friendship? Or was that something you knew from the get-go that your personalities would jive and it would all work out?
Well, we didn't really hang out all the time. That's what I mean by like us being more like siblings. Like they were friends that were like, I didn't go out with them every night or every weekend at all. It was more like friends that saw each other like once a month. So it was perfect. But like I know him better than a lot of my friends that I would see more regularly, So it was like more of a type of relationship thing.
Our other business partner was my roommate all through high school, and we actually hang out all the time, but we've been through, if we could live together for 5 years, I wasn't that worried about the business side of it.
Right.
Especially
exactly.
Right in the world. And if I could tolerate that, then I could tolerate anything. So, yeah. So and what Jen said, I didn't think, figured we'd be okay.
We've all seen the best of us and the worst of us, of each other, so unless someone really goes psycho, we'll be all right.
Collin, you mentioned you knew that you had complementary skill sets. What did everybody envision each of you brought to the table? Like, I mean, so many times you think of someone opening a brewery. You got the brewery guy, you got the operations guy, you got the finance guy. You got different people who wear different hats. what hat did everyone initially bring to the table when they kind of signed up for the role?
So Travis has he has a law degree and a legal background, and he's pretty even keeled, good at he has a good sense of judgment and a good head on his shoulders, I guess. Would be the role for him. Jen's amazing with people and has great relationships throughout town, and always makes people feel welcome and appreciated, and that's a huge skill that the more that we progress in business, the more important that becomes, I guess, and the larger we grow. And then I think I have like a lot of ideas and I work hard at stuff. So
no, they're all good skills that work together, and it's obviously done well for you guys. You all.
Yep.
When you first were drinking these beers, having these conversations at Bodega about, opening a business together, did it immediately come across as something you were going to do? Or like everybody who's making, homebrew, you all have the idea of, let's open a brewery someday. At what point in time did you go from just brewing beer together, having the conversation to like, okay, we're really doing this?
What do you remember about it, Jen?
I mean, I feel like we found, the funny thing is this sort of brings our head brewer into the mix, our brewmaster into the mix, because we were like, all right, let's order this homebrew equipment. Okay, do we know anyone who knows how to use it? Okay, we know this guy, and now he's been with us 8 years. So it's which was a huge turning point. It was like a huge turning point.
Yeah,
our head brewer and like making a good batch of beer was like, oh my God, we can actually really do this,
Yep.
That's kind of what it seemed real to me.
He had been a homebrew restaurant chef, but avid homebrewer for years. I think like 2 or 3 years at the point we ran into him. And his name is also Collin, so that's why it stuck in my head. We had both been volunteering at another brewery here called Elevator, helping them on the bottling line, which was a lot of like watching their bottling line break down and watching them drink beers and then watching it break down again. So we had a lot of chance to talk, and I got his phone number. We maybe had like 1 or 2 other conversations, and when we finally it was a big deal to us. It was a 1-barrel Blickman system, which felt like a very like real system for us. And we're like, well, how do we operate this? I'm like, I know a guy. His name's Collin. So that was, and then when he came over and actually brewed, and we ended up, like Jen said, with something that tasted vaguely, mostly like beer, we're like, well, wait, we can probably figure this out. So that was when it kind of clicked, and we're like, well, let's find a space and see if we can it was one of the SBA 7A loans. So 2/3 investors, 1/3 our own capital. We didn't have the capital, so it was, let's go try and find some people and line up the 1/3 capital that we needed to get the rest of the way there.
And at that point in time, what was the Columbus craft beer scene like?
There were 7 breweries.
Yeah, depending on which year, 4 to 7 breweries, nobody. And I think we were the 7th or 8th brewery, depending on how you count it, because like one brew on premise homebrew place opened before us. They always say we can just call it ourselves the 7th brewery because it fits better. But they were open, and then I think in like 15 there was kind of an explosion, and I think we're up to like 55 or 60 breweries now around Columbus.
It's been fascinating to watch the growth of craft beer in Columbus. There's a lot of cities that you see exploding right now that aren't like the traditional Portland, San Diego's, Asheville's. And I think Columbus falls into that line of breweries that are, or cities that are seeing a ton of success right now. Another that I think falls into that category is Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't necessarily think craft beer when I think Charlotte, but the amount the craft breweries are just exploding in both your city and Charlotte, it blows my mind. Why do you think in Columbus you're seeing that growth?
I think there's a lot of young people, a lot of dads, a lot of young people, a lot of like everybody here. OSU is huge.
Yeah, I think college ground helps.
And I think part of our particular beer and vibe that we thought would sell is like, I went to Columbus College of Art and Design, and we've always all been friends with really smart people when it comes to aesthetics and creating spaces and things like that. And I feel like we kind of knew, not to sound egotistical, but like we kind of knew we would nail the vibe and the space and the design work of it because of our reach and our talented friends, you know? And I think that in Columbus, it's definitely, I mean, our beer is amazing, but people love the space so much that has helped our beer so much, and vice versa, you know, that I think that it's just a full package. And I think that our cans are amazing, things like that. He's frozen. You froze up, Collin.
You're back.
Yeah, I think I'm back. Yeah. I was going to say to that point about the. Now I'm gone again. All right. But just about Columbus and what's making it work here, I think a lot of it does have to do with the kind of the taproom model that was so popular everywhere. It was just kind of especially popular in Columbus. Like, people realized you didn't have to open up a full-on production brewery. You could just have a successful, smaller, like 700 to 2,000 barrel, mostly taproom brewery that maybe service a handful of wholesale accounts. And then Ohio has, and we worked really hard with Ohio Craft Brew Association to have a very friendly atmosphere. We have self-distribution. We got the ABV cap lifted. A lot of things in the state make it a lot easier than a lot of other states. And I think some of these places that see where people don't give it enough credit, but some of these places that see the explosion or the growth of the craft beer, the breweries, and the industry in general, a lot of that does have to do with the legislative atmosphere. Like, do you have a place where Ohio doesn't have an excise tax, which is nice? Some things like that, some real basic kind of like nuts and bolts things that aren't that like sexy or interesting, but they make it a lot easier to actually run a business.
So how did you, Collin, end up being the one to go in front of Congress, leading the OCBA, as opposed to Travis, who has the legal background?
Travis will not do a public engagement of any type, but I think it was just because I got to know some of the Brewers Association people from working with the OCBA. It was what guy will actually get on the plane and I went from that.
It's not even that long of a plane ride. You could have drove. I've made the drive to Ohio countless times in my life. It's not too bad.
You know, I thought about driving. If my wife hadn't given me permission to fly, I would just drive.
No, yeah, I get it. So another thing that I found, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, like the legal opportunities to open a brewery are huge. So everything you talk about at the Ohio Craft Brewers Association and your legislators have done has been hugely vital to your existence and the existence of great craft beer in Ohio. I've also seen a common trend of really strong entrepreneurial communities and a lot of tech-based communities where we're seeing a lot of growth these days. Do you feel that Columbus, has a really strong like startup entrepreneurial type community there?
Actually, we do have a really strong, we've been getting a lot of venture capital funding lately for different tech things. There's some like a handful of healthcare startups. Root Insurance Company is based out of here. Cover My Meds, which is a big healthcare, is based out of here. So it has been getting a lot of kind of press, and I think it's something that Columbus has always had to offer as far as low cost of living, really nice people, good culinary, good food scene, good art scene, colleges based around. It's that kind of perfect, kind of easy place to slot into, I think, for people.
No, that's awesome, and it definitely contributes to your success. So you launched Seventh Son 2013, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, was the plan ever to launch multiple brands, or at what point in your life cycle, Jen, you're just shaking your head. At what point did you be like, we've done really well with this place. You want to do another? Like, when did that happen?
That's kind of exactly how it happened. we have so many ideas, and we joke all the time. Like, we're opening a third bar. I could open like 8 more. Like, we have all these ideas on deck that are just like fun concepts. But to do them well, we want to, we don't want to open a million all at once. Like, I think the timing and the spacing of them has been like perfect, really. Antiques on High was just like a really fun, because Seventh Son's very open, very easy breezy. It's just very unassuming and casual, and everybody feels like they fit in when they walk in. And Antiques is much the same, but it's also very like, you feel like you've discovered this really cool spot that's been there 50 years that you just didn't notice before. Little gem. And we worked really hard to make it look like we didn't work really hard on it. You know what I mean? And I think that, yeah. And then we were just like, okay, well, now what? These bars are super fun, I mean, we didn't even think Seventh Son would be open as a bar. We thought it would be a brewery that was like, had events. And then people in Columbus were just like, why would you not be open all the time? So, I mean, it's just, yeah, it seems to be where people come to bring out of town people, and people coming and going from weddings always pop in. And I don't know. It just seemed like unless we're not having fun opening these bars, we'll probably keep opening them,
It's been like a really nice to have something else. Like, it's almost like and especially actually during pandemic and thinking about Getaway and everything, it was one of my favorite parts was actually like working on Getaway and having this like new fun concept that we could think about. And I think that's just that's why we're, rather than like, we could do another Seventh Son up in Dublin, and I think people would love it. Like, there'd be nothing wrong with it, and they'd enjoy it a lot. But it was that kind of thing. Well, what's something new and something interesting and something that excites us and gets all of our, like Jen had mentioned briefly, like, we have a great group of friends and people and vendors we've met through the business who are just creative and good at things. And it's like, how can we engage these people that we work with and engage our staff and engage ourselves in this like new problem? I think it makes it a much better and more interesting thing, and it makes it more fun to pass the time learning about it. Like, it makes sense in a weird way, but then you tell other people and they're like, wait, you have different breweries? Like, why'd you do different breweries? But to us, it like makes perfect sense. Well, of course we do something different, because it's more fun to like figure out a new problem than to just do the same thing again.
As someone who likes to create as well, I definitely understand the rush you get when you have a new concept that's different than what you're currently working on. It makes you want to drop your current project and multitask and go to the other project and just get that stream of creativity flowing. It's such a absolutely fun process. Like, to go back to when you first launched Seventh Son, though, like, if you had to describe the image you were looking for in just like a sentence or two, I mean, obviously, back then in craft beer, there weren't as much competition as options in the area. But what was that atmosphere you were looking to create? Is there a certain vibe that you wanted people to walk out your doors and say, I felt XYZ at Seventh Son? Is there a certain, idea you had in the back of your minds?
I think we have what we've always wanted there, like an all welcoming, all encompassing. You could be like, our happy hours can be like 80-year-old men sitting together and chatting that are neighbors, that meet there every Wednesday or whatever. And then you look down and there's like drag queens, we just get such a great mix, and it's very much the neighborhood, but it's also like, it's just a really chill, good vibes place. Like, I know that term is so overused, but it's true. Like, people feel warm and welcomed, and like, we really emphasize that with our staff. Like, we want everyone to feel so welcome there.
And I think for the aesthetic, we've always like kind of played on it up until Getaway is actually going in a new building, but that's something new for us. Like, something that with Antiques and with Seventh Son that was really important was like, we're fascinated by, let's get this old building and highlight the things in it that are cool. Like the way the brick patterns are different and not like anything you see anymore, and do some things that kind of like highlight the natural, cool, older aesthetics and simplicity of the existing building, rather than trying to like over design it. It was always kind of with Seventh Son, like, let's go really simple and highlight the bones of the building and just make this like welcoming, cool, simple, clean atmosphere out of it.
So I did have the opportunity to visit Antiques on High a few years ago, and I remember sitting at the bar, and I could be wrong because I visit a lot of breweries, so don't hesitate to correct me. But I remember there was like some kind of small-looking door under a stairwell. Is that true? Is that my memory correct?
Yeah.
What is that?
We don't know.
that's kind of a I think there was this weird space under the stairs, and we could have just walled it up, or we could have opened it up, and we just decided to open it up and throw some there's some wallpaper that may or may not have been rescued from a Warhol exhibit at the Wexner Center, and some other weird horns in there, and a strange globe. It was one of those things to just kind of make you like scratch your head and wonder about why that was there. So
it absolutely served its purpose. It looked like some Harry Potter-like door from some, weird movie I saw about 20 years ago. Yeah. I love it. So looking ahead to the getaway, what's the concept there?
Chill vibes, good beer. We kind of were like, okay, we originally thought we wanted lighter beer styles, drinkable and light and bright. Everything about the place was light and bright. Antiques is very dark and dim. This place is going to be light and bright. But we kind of figured out, we were thinking of a name, and we came up with Getaway because we own a vehicle that's called the Getaway Van already, and it seemed to make sense. And then we were like, oh my God, okay, it's vacation vibes, it's travel vibes, it's drinks from around the world, beers from around the world, and that's really easy to just like get your brain going. So there's some really fun like airline nods, like design wise, and we're gonna serve like little peanuts with flights, things like that. There's some fun like peekaboo windows that are little airplane windows that look down into little shadow boxes that look like you're flying over a beach or a mountainscape. But we don't want to ruin the huge surprise, which is like the centerpiece of the place.
I have my guesses.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah.
Is there going to be an airplane in your brewery?
Wish.
No. Well, yeah, it's gonna be really neat and really different though. And the Getaway, that we were tossing around names forever, settled. Jen actually came up with Getaway, and it just led to this like, how can we do lighter styles, but not just lighter styles, but kind of beers from all around the world. So it's an excuse to brew like everything from German lagers to like a Japanese rice lager to maybe a more culinary inspired beer with like lemongrass or Thai ingredients to South African stouts to, it's kind of an excuse to brew the styles that we don't necessarily brew at Seventh Son as a American craft brewery, and we don't do at Antiques High as being focused on sour wild and a little bit of hazy. There's this whole other world of beer styles that might not get as much kind of play all the time, but there's some really cool things out there. And I think people are already starting, like Pilsners and lagers are kind of having a moment right now. And people are starting to look for these, like, what are some of these other recipes that we haven't tried before? And Getaway kind of leads very naturally to like all of these different places that we wouldn't necessarily go if we were just going more straight ahead. Like, here's our stouts, here's our IPAs, here's.
So you both have mentioned how many breweries there are in Columbus right now. Do you believe it's your unique focus on the vibe and just the styles of beer you're making that help you stand out in the Columbus area?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that there are, actually Columbus has a bunch of like really great breweries, and I think the great breweries will always continue to do really well. And really I can't think of a single brewery around town that I've been to that is like horribly messing up and doing anything wrong. And I think a lot of them, especially coming out of pandemic times, are going to be doing great. But I think in terms of standing out and what makes us unique, I think that we're thinking about it a lot more as a whole kind of concept. And I think a lot of breweries think a lot about their logo and their beer, and I'm going to throw beer garden tables in the front and have some Edison bulbs and call it a day. And it works. There's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't, it's not the same as like, we're genuinely trying not only to compete, or not compete necessarily, but we're trying to compete with other breweries around town, but we're trying to compete with any other bar around town or any other kind of drinking experience. It's not just a brewery, it's just a very interesting, cool place that you want to go to just to see the place and just to experience the drinks and the whole vibe of it, I guess.
Yeah, and absolutely. At the end of the day, you want to be everyone's first choice, and you do that by creating those experiences that you've managed to create at going on 3 different locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like the playlist. We obsess. We pay. I mean, that is the best playlist at any bar in Ohio, I'm convinced. Things like that really matter, you know.
No, I love it. So how do you find time to run all of these businesses? I mean, running one business alone takes its toll on a person. Then you throw in the mix that you have children running around. So how do you find time to expand your repertoire and say, hey, let's add a third business to all of this? You know, how do you, like, when you wake up in the morning, how are you dedicating your time?
A lot of delegating and trusting of our like management squad, really. Like, I've never been a micromanager of anybody. You know, Collin, he has things he's a little more particular about, but once you get it's interesting because our business sort of grew and a lot of folks carved out their own jobs, you know? So they sort of have created their own job descriptions. So it's this really interesting thing. Like, once something became too big, we're like, oh, we need a manager for this thing, you know? When I would just do it like 5 hours a week before. So it's just sort of organic growth, and just, we've got some people that have worked with us since the day we opened, you know, and they've had 3 different jobs and they've advanced, and and I think being able to trust your crew is with the right amount of communication between senior management and us and, everybody else is really important. And I would attribute a lot of it to that, being able to know that shit's going to run smoothly, so it allows us time to explore new things.
At any point, was it hard to give up control? Go ahead, Collin.
I was going to say, like, I think overall we're still pretty lean as a business. We have our the 3 of us. We have a GM, marketing and media, but we don't have a lot of those. We haven't gotten to the level of having a lot of those kind of traditional CFO, CEO, C-suite things at all. And we still tend to, kind of like Jen said, we get to a certain point and realize that a position needs to be created, or it needs to become that thing. And we're getting to a couple of those points, I think, with the additional staff that we're going to have at Getaway, and just the additional, we're not just 2 miles away from our other location. We're now a solid 20, 25, 30-minute drive away from our other location. I think we're going to need to add some more people, but both hiring from within, looking a little bit from without, that overriding thing of just kind of trusting your people and letting them do a good job and not getting in their way, and trying to be more of a conduit and less of a director, I think is important to our workflow.
At any point, was it hard to give up control?
Not for
I
me.
probably had more issues with that than, yeah. I used to work in the brewery a little bit. I spent like 2 or 3 years working in the brewery, and I used to like to work behind the bar too at times. And over the course of the business, I just realized that my time is not best spent trying to dump 50-pound bags of malt while holding a cell phone, while doing whatever else. So, yeah.
I can understand that. So looking back at the past 8 years, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned? Has there been anything that's completely surprised you, or any challenge you faced that you didn't expect?
I think I've definitely learned how to, like Collin has definitely made me a harder worker, and like I've tried to learn from everybody at Seventh Son, like what they're really good at. I'm like, well, that's awesome. I'm not very good at that thing, and how can I be better at that? Not to compare myself, but to like be inspired by the people around me all the time. I think that's huge for me. That's been like a big thing.
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned from this is how much, like, of course it's the beer, of course that's your focus, and that's why everybody gets into the business, but it's still the hospitality business, and how much of what we do, it has to be centered around hospitality and the guests, and thinking about our environment and thinking about our people, and making sure that as part of that hospitality equation, that the people who work for you genuinely enjoy their job and appreciate their job and appreciate you as a owner or founder. It makes such a huge difference to what you can get out of people if you have that honest, good, appreciative relationship with your employees, and that's been huge. And it continues. I guess the relationship always continues to evolve, but that's been one of the biggest things. Is just that the employee relationships and the guest relationships.
No, I love it. And the energy you two put out and Travis puts out, that energy has the ability to be contagious to your staff, to your guests. And that is the recipe for success right there. If people, just love your company and love the culture you put out, it'll make people want to return, not just your guests, but your staff, but everyone involved. And you feel it as soon as you walk in. It's such that, really happy feeling that everybody just, strives for, honestly. Now, one thing I was thinking about as we talked about, you could have just opened more Seventh Sons. You could have just went with the multiple taproom model. And it's an interesting point that you mentioned that, because when people do the taproom model where they're just going to different cities, going to different neighborhoods with the same brand, they have to live up to a certain, level of consistency across each experience. Sure, you can have slightly differences in each location because you want it to reflect the local vibe. But at the end of the day, if you're Seventh Son here, you're still Seventh Son there. When you go into a place fresh, I think it's actually a nice, model you've created, because you don't have to live up to any standard. You're reinventing yourself in every endeavor that you take on. Is that something you thought about when you first decided to go that model, or was it just more so a perk that you discovered, well, hey, we can do things a little bit different now? A little leeway, so to speak.
Jen?
Collin, you're really deflecting.
I just didn't want to, I don't like chains stuff. And it just, even if we opened another Seventh Son here or there, it wouldn't be a chain necessarily. But I just, like I said earlier, there's just like too many good ideas to just stick to one. And the fact that people aren't expecting the exact same thing at every place, I suppose, is just a bonus, because I never really thought about that. But I just,
until just now.
So to me, having multiple of the same one, I just don't, I wouldn't want that, but yeah.
Yeah, there's actually, there's a restaurant group here around town, the Cameron Mitchell group, and he's got places in Ocean Prime that's somewhat national chain, and then he has like 6 or 7 different places around town, and he's opened, he had like an Italian concept, and he has a fine dining concept, and he has a kind of seafood type gastropub concept and something like that. And there's other restaurateurs around town that have kind of done that same thing. And it seems like a much more common vibe in the restaurant industry. People are like, oh, sure, this guy opened up an Italian place, and he opened up a German place, and he opened but for some reason, people just don't think that way in the brewery thing. But like I said, it was almost, I think definitely because of Jen's natural aversion, and I think we all have a little bit of an aversion to like feeling like a chainy kind of place. But it seemed way more natural to us to just like, well, of course we want to figure out a different new thing because it's more fun and it's going to be, we want it to have its own personality and be able to stand on its own 2 feet.
So it's interesting, Collin, the way you explain that. You talk about the other company as a restaurant group. Are you going to get to a point in time where you refer to what you created as a brewery group? And I'm not going to necessarily say a more corporate vibe, but you'll have to have a little bit more structure to make sure things run smoothly. Do you think you'll get to that level where you have like that headquarters in a fancy office building?
God, I don't know. I don't think that we want to get to that level. I think we want to keep it to where we know. I want to know everybody who's working for me, and like I want to know about the people who work for me. I want people to recognize me when I go into one of my players. I don't know. Like I don't think we would ever want to get that. That seems unwieldy, and it seems like we would lose a lot of the warmth that we genuinely enjoy about the business. But of course, if another opportunity presents itself, having like 4 places or 5 places doesn't seem horribly intimidating, but having 20 places seems like hell.
Well, it seems like hell when you have 3. When you have 5 or 6, 20 could be the next frontier. And Jen, early on, you had mentioned, oh, well, we could just have 8 more of these. Is that something you actually think about, or, are you content with the current level of operations you're overseeing?
Well, one of them is going to be a bar in my basement.
What's going to be the theme there?
I mean, more stuff like that. Well, it already has the 6 wood paneling. It's really long. There's a fireplace at one end that works. So it'll be like Midwest basement bar.
Well, you were talking about your shot skis
Yeah, shot skis will be like our bro bar. Our chain concept that's not a chain. I don't know. Like I would love like a pool bar, like a ski lodge. Like there's just so many classic.
When you say pool, I have to ask, do you mean like billiards pool, or do you mean like swimming pool? Or
no,
do you mean maybe both? You can do both, I think, successfully.
Like a floating tiki hut in the middle of a bar. I don't know. Maybe not in Columbus, but
indoor floating tiki hut.
Yeah, I love it. It sounds fun. You can take the kids, hop on a big old floaty, and just drink your whatever while you're in the pool.
Yeah.
Super family friendly. But like the pandemic's been a weird time this past year, and I really tried not to talk about it. But when you guys have done essentially a taproom style model, and that's been almost an anti-pandemic type strategy, what's made you want to keep doing that? I mean, it's been tough the past year, but you've obviously seen hope in what you're doing. Do you think that model is still going to be something we see a lot of other brewers do?
Yeah, I think people fundamentally just want to go out. Everybody adapted. Everybody bought more things online. Everybody kind of changed their lives for a little bit. But I'm kind of the mind that when everybody's personal safety threshold is reached, it's going to snap back real quick. Like I do think that people are ordering a little more online, buying a little more, but I think fundamentally that people just want to get out of the house and go somewhere and have an experience. And I don't think that'll change until, if this didn't change it, I don't know what else would change it.
I can agree to that. We're all definitely craving interaction right now. And to go back to something both of you mentioned early on when you first met each other, you made it seem like you fit in all kinds of circles, whether you're with the jocks, you're with the theater nerds, you're with whoever, you could get along with everybody. And I think, whether you think about it or not, that probably plays into a lot about how you've been able to create these really inclusive environments, because you didn't want something that just felt good to one type of person. You wanted that welcoming vibe where everybody could come and have a good time. And that just happens to be who you were in 8th grade, and it happens to be who you still are now.
Well, and I think that's interesting because we don't want to be all things to all people. Like we definitely have our taste, and we have curated everything the way we want it. And we don't just get Red Bull because someone wants it or someone orders it. We're like, we will never serve Red Bull. I'm sorry. It's just, we're not going to do that. But there's such a fine line between being all things to all people and then just like being so welcoming and like making everyone feel like they are super welcome there. And I feel like we pride ourselves on taking that, like walking that line really well, making a statement like, no, this is who we are, but you are more than welcome to hang out and we love everybody, you know? I think that's the trick of it.
Well, I'm excited to make it back up to Columbus and experiences all your places once again. But Jen, I have one final question for you before I ask Collin one final one as well. I know you mentioned in your bio that you like karaoke. So what's your go-to song?
I'm
getting the backtrack going right now.
I have quite a few. I really like doing, God, what would I sing if I was going tonight?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
I
would
would
probably have that one beer song that you probably have after I've had, you know, quite a few. I'm gonna be brave and sing that one.
Ooh, okay. Maybe Love on the Rocks, like maybe like a Neil Diamond ballad, or I love singing like Wanda Jackson and Loretta Lynn.
Chili Dog song from
Summer or Brian. Wow. I'm not going anywhere for karaoke tonight. I don't know. Ryan Adams.
There we go. Hope to catch you live someday.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, so do you ever have plans for a karaoke themed brewery? Is that in the the mix?
I would definitely open a karaoke bar when I'm like 65. I would totally do that.
I love it. No, Collin, on to you. You know, I know your breweries, they don't have kitchens, do they? Is that correct?
Nope, no kitchens.
So you have food trucks come by all the time. You know, how do you feel when you get that super popular hipster food truck that comes in serving grilled cheese? Like, what emotions go through your body?
I am so grilled cheese has been such a weird part of my life that whenever I see it, I think it makes me a little happy. There's like I did one of the most popular things I did at the restaurant before we opened up the brewery was I started a Monday night dollar grilled cheese, and it was like lines out the door every Monday for 10 years. And it was just like a nice little nod to like, hey, here's how I got started and everything, and here's still it's still around. So it makes me feel good.
I can relate to that. I know when I was in college, like every Tuesday was like grilled cheese day. And whether you wanted a grilled cheese or not, you would go in there and eat 5 of them just because they were there. So yeah, grilled cheeses make me happy as well.
Yeah.
No, well, Jen and Collin, this has been an absolute pleasure getting to see your faces today and have a little conversation. I'm excited for your new project and getaway. I'm excited for everything that comes down the road, and hopefully we're having beers in person in the not too distant future. So thank you both for sharing your stories today, and it's been a fun one. So love moving forward, and hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, Andrew. This was really fun.
Hey, cheers, Collin. Cheers, Jen.
Thank you so much. Bye, you too.
See ya.